Hello, everyone. This week, our weekly live stream is really exciting one. We are actually at the KubeCon floor. You probably don't see that, but let me turn off the camera so you can see. We're just on the floor, on the solution showcase. You can see all the people here. Actually, and Oren High here today. There is only permit guests in the live stream, and we are going to talk everything about what we are announcing in KubeCon. What happened since the last time we sponsored KubeCon? Permit is a veteran KubeCon sponsor. I think it's the third or the fourth KubeCon that we are sponsoring.
Yeah.
What is our perception on the cloud native community? What changed in Permit since the last time, and what is our forecast for the cloud native community? And we also have very exciting pre-announcement, something I think it will be impact for many Permit users, especially for the community. Wait for that. We'll be with that soon. So I'm Gabriel. You probably know me. I'm the VP Developer Relations in Permit.io, and with me, Or Permit CEO and co-founder.
Hey
And
everyone.
we'll start with asking Or, from the cloud native perspective. We are here actually for people that wanted to come to KubeCon but couldn't join KubeCon. Maybe they are from Europe. Maybe the boss is not generous like you that brought me to KubeCon. But what changed in Permit for the since the last KubeCon?
Yeah, well, a lot of things have changed. So we've seen our category, authorization as a service, really mature and grow in both its market awareness and in the maturity of products there. So one of the key things here is that we started with OPA, Open Policy Agent, but we also started supporting Cedar from AWS. And now we're seeing new technologies coming in with OpenFGA, which is also a CNCF project. And with permit we're also supporting that, so we're seeing the category maturing with both permissions as a graph, policy as code, and with permit we're also seeing them coming together in one solution. That's something that I'm personally really excited about, because there's the different pros and cons that you get with graph based and code based, and trying to marry the two, I think, is one of the most important things that the vendors like ourselves and others here in the industry should try to do.
Yeah, I think you mentioned like OpenFGA. I think since the last time we've been here, OpenFGA significantly grown in the community. People are knowing more OpenFGA. People are talking about OpenFGA. What do you think make OpenFGA that popular for the last year?
It's a simple, very simple answer. The answer is Google Zanzibar. So the white paper that Google published several years ago, um, Google didn't create any open source for it. They only set out the white paper telling people how they do access control within Google. And obviously, Google is a trend leader, a concept leader in the industry. So a lot of companies are looking to Google to see how to do this correctly. But without something that you can latch onto, an actual piece of technology, some code that you can start building with, the Google Zanzibar paper wasn't, the concepts behind it weren't really accessible to people. Now with these open source standards, we both have an agreement of what people are looking at least for graph-based and relationship-based access control. And we're starting to see the understanding and adoption come with that as well. And at Pyramid, we're seeing this as the more requests for capabilities around relationship-based access control. And I think that has become more and more a predominant policy model, as opposed to just RBAC, or maybe just RBAC with a little bit of ABAC. Starting to see RBAC take a little more center stage. But we're also seeing people wanting to balance it with classic RBAC and classic ABAC.
Yeah, I think another thing that is very interesting that happened since the last time we've been here, and I think is very relevant for the personas here, the persona people of KubeCon, people of cloud native community. We also added a way to configure permissions with Terraform, with
Mm.
infrastructure as code, with HCL. Here we are in the KubeCon. You couldn't say Terraform, you say OpenTofu, but that's the same. You can configure permit schema with HCL, with the Terraform or OpenTofu language. And I think it says a lot about the persona of people and the way that you're actually modeling permissions. Want to tell us more about it?
Yeah, I think one of the key things that we learn is that in an organization, everyone's building permissions. It's not just the developers, it's not just ops, It's not just the product. It's security, it's compliance, it's support, it's sales. Everyone's connecting people and systems to the product that they've built. And you want the right people to have the right interfaces. So we want to have a no-code interface, something simple that the product managers can use. We want to have the policies code that the advanced engineers can use. We want the REST API and SDKs that most of the engineers can use. But we also want to orchestrate this in scale. We want this to connect to our CI/CD. We want to connect this to our ops. We want to be able to work with baseline policies. We want to work with templates. And this is where Terraform and infrastructure as code in general really, really shines. And so instead of reinventing the wheel and have another unique language for policy, we decided to go with Terraform and HCL and just build the object on top of it, which most ops organizations, most engineers already know. And we thought and we saw that garnered a lot of adoption. So immediately with launching it, we saw more and more people starting to author their policies with infrastructure as code. So you have your Terraform provider you write HCL for it, and that generates policy as code, legal code for you. So you have your higher level, and you have your actual code being enforced in the policy engine.
Yeah, I think one of the perspectives that make me interested about the infrastructure as code is not about everyone, it's about everywhere, about the continuous manner of configuring schema. And not only that, when you are thinking about, so let's say languages like Rego or
Cedar.
even like Cedar, they are kind of coupling the way that you do the data itself, the attributes of the users, the role assignment, everything. If you think of OpenFGA, you kind of, for many people, they are just expressing both schema and assignment together in one file.
Right.
And I think our infrastructure as code is taking a step and say, no, you need to decouple. There is the schema of the config, there is the schema of the policy, and there is the data. The schema is managed with the software development lifecycle. And this is the point that I want you also to expand about.
Yeah.
How the Terraform is contribute for platform engineers, for DevOps to create better software development lifecycles in terms of authorization.
Yeah. It's a terrific point and question. So a lot of times like people think, oh, I'll just have the policy and that's for like the entire application, but that doesn't actually meet your reality. You have your different policies in different stages that people are developing. You have your additional policy that meets new features that you have in dev branches. You have your state that you have in your staging, and you have different stakeholders that need to connect to this. And you can't just let everyone just shove in policy onto the production environment. That's just like with any other type of code. That's a bad idea. So it's really about building the right flows. And a lot of people, when we talk to customers, a lot of people ask me, how do I go about creating a CI flow for our policies? And I always answer the same thing. It can grow into something very unique. I always start with your existing CI flow. You already know how to work with code. So you just need the tools to connect your policy authoring to your existing flows alongside your application. So with Permit, we've done that with, as we've mentioned, with the Terraform provider, but we also with more fundamental capabilities within Permit. So if your projects and environments, so within Permit, you can manage multiple applications, not just one. And you can have multiple environments, so multiple deployments, dev, staging, preview branches, pair application, also from the same interface. And you have access control for your access control. So you can say something like a product manager, they're allowed to add permissions to this preview branch or to staging, but they can't go into production. For that, they have to go for another developer or for the CI/CD system that will enable them to merge this into the production.
Yep.
And this is the already the things that you're doing in your code yourself. So it's just you need these gates and blocks, and you need these interfaces to just enable you to connect this to what you are already doing. So that's a lot of the new stuff around CI/CD that we've been building with permits. Both the access control for the access control, the multiple environments management, the API for managing with CI/CD, so the ability to take one environment and merge its policies into another, and the ability to create templates and baselines and replicate those into live deployed environments on the fly.
Yeah, I think that's super critical, and I really enjoy to see the personas that evolve in the market. I think one of the collocated events yesterday was about platform engineers. I know that in platform engineering, the hot topic is like internal developer platforms and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And we have here Peter McDonald's a couple of weeks ago who discussed about also permissions for developers. And I think it's very exciting that DevOps is not only about spinning up machines, it's not about, only about automating that, it's also about influence the way developers work. And I think it's a great example of how even a very business specific use case like authorization that developer were really has a fear to externalize, now they are getting enabled to externalize that with platforms that can influence the way that they are actually implementing permissions. And as Or mentioned, of course, the infrastructure as code is really helpful to make it even more
It
smoother.
gives the different people on the team the ability to support one another. So if before everyone was just writing their own policies and like just let all hell break loose, nowadays with the tools that we're bringing to the table, you can have the platform engineering team or the DevOps team provide these capabilities for the developers. So a developer doesn't have to start from scratch. They can take an existing environment and permit or take an existing HCL script as the baseline for the policies that they want to build. And actually, maybe we can give people a sneak peek. Another feature that we're coming up with is policy for policy. So, how do you control when someone else authors a policy? How do you control that the policy that they're authoring is complying with your policy for policy? So this is something that you can already do with templates and Terraform in Permit, and with tests that you can do on top of the CI/CD. But soon, Permit will enforce that for you as part of the policy authoring process. So you can say each policy written for this application has to have an admin role. That role has to have access to do creations of files or editing the user list, and it will be impossible for other people to remove that if you say that this has to be enforced for the policy. And this is really something that we're seeing evolving. So thanks to the mindset of platform engineering, thanks to tools like Terraform, thanks to tools like CI/CD, we're seeing this capabilities surface up into policy and access control and security in general.
Yeah, I think I will really enjoy there. I saw that in Europe they are not going to have the app developer con, so I was like a little sad about it. But I think the platform can like replace for us the app developer con that would been really involved. I'll also mention that we are going to host on Friday the Policy Engine Showdown. I gather people from OPA, from CEDAR, from OpenFGA, from end users company that actually, and here in the KubeCon, we are going to be all in the stage fighting about the right policy engines for you. And you know what I think? I think that you need to choose the policy engine for your use case, but you probably need to understand there is no policy engine that is better than the other. There are policy engines that are fit more for particular use cases. Of course, if you're not in the KubeCon, you'll get a recording after of the panel, so really inviting you to watch that later. Another thing that I think is very important for the cloud native community that happened in Permit lately is the improvement for the decentralized policy decision point. We pushed two very important features for that. The offline mode that allow DevOps and platform engineers to be more quiet about the way that they are managing policy. They can save it on the state on the disk. They can make
People,
sure.
people are constantly worried about the availability
Yeah.
and performance of their authorization layer, and justly so. It's one of the most critical pieces in your software. If it fails, basically your entire software structure fails. So we wanted to make sure that everyone can use the policy and their authorization layer regardless of the disaster scenario, regardless if permit is up, regardless if the cloud's available, regardless of anything. If there's a policy decision point, if it's alive, if it's been configured, you can spin it up and replicate it anytime you want with the offline mode. So once PDP spins up, you can have it replicated state to disk, and then you can have it spin it up again from that replicated state. So once it's synced once, you know it will forever be available and capable of answering queries. And you'll also know that once you have one, you can have as many of those as you want. You can take those configurations and just map them into more containers. So you can scale out even without the cloud.
Yeah.
And I think that this is really critical for the success of the any authorization layer someone is building.
I'll say another point about it. I think we have also another launch. We talk about it on the launch week, but if you're probably on KubeCon and you probably met OPA, Open Policy Agent, you usually many people in the KubeCon scene work with OPA, and one of the biggest challenges with Open Policy Agent is managing large volumes of data. if you're using OPA for, let's say, Kubernetes admissions, you probably do not have that much data. Most of your authorization is based on policies. But if you're using it for authorization, you probably can have very large volumes of data. We have like customers with petabytes of data that they need to consider in the policy engines. And one of the improvements we bring to the PDP, and that's actually something that everyone who is using OPA can instead use the policy decision point of permit and extend the OPA capabilities with the new data sync project, what we call like local fact. So now we added an improvement to OPA. So instead of keeping everything in the OPA cache that is very limited to, let's say, I think 2 GB is starting to get really slow decision. Now you can grow like double 10 or maybe even more than that using our new SQLite data partition for OPA. Or do you want to?
Yeah, so to clarify, so now when you deploy a permit PDP, so the permit PDP was already comprised of open source. It was comprised of OPA or Cedar and obviously OPAL, our own open source project. And so you were able to deploy a PDP, it would sync and immediately start enforcing access. And the data is loaded into it and allowing it to do that enforcement. But as Gabriel said, there's a challenge when you have a lot of data that you need to make available there. So by adding another database component into the PDP itself and optimizing OPA to work with that, now you can have huge amounts of data as part of the PDP available locally, synced with the cloud, but available locally and available efficiently to be used by OPA, even though it's not part of its cache. We've built a very sophisticated slicing mechanism. So the data is available at that SQLite database and later other types of databases, but it's available locally and loaded on the fly as a slice into OPA according to the query that is sent in. So this gives you the ability to enjoy the performance and optimization of OPA with huge volumes of data, which basically wasn't really possible before. And this is also a critical point to marry uh, policy as graph and policy as code. So now when your graph gets big, you can utilize more parts of it as part of your policy as code engine and not suffer from them being completely disconnected just because of the data gap.
Yeah, I think this capability. I've been here at KubeCon for many times, and I met a lot of users who is using OPA. OPA has a lot of challenges. Part of them, is, of course, for long days solved with OPAL, with Open Policy Administration Layer, like synchronizing policies, synchronizing data. But one of the challenges that wasn't solved by permit yet, and now it's actually solved, and you can enjoy that, is managing large volumes. So if you are actually managing large volume of data with OPA and you feel the challenge, you see that OPA is getting slower in performance, probably reach out to us or just check out permit and check out the PDP that let you run OPA with significantly larger volumes of
Yeah.
data.
And although this is a feature that we're releasing now, it's really fresh out of the oven. So if you want to be early adopters, if you want to get access to this before anyone else, reach out to us. Message us either on the chat here, or even or better yet, in our Slack community, and we can prioritize your access to it. And I'm very excited to see both our big customers that we're already working with that are utilizing this for their scale, and what everyone else will be doing with this to build really amazing applications with advanced policies and access.
Yeah. So that's actually great features that we just discovered that is really relevant for the Kubernetes and the cloud native community. But now we are getting to a quite bigger announcement. We are very happy to announce that Permit very soon, probably next week, is going to launch a new pricing tier. And let's give you a brief of sneak view to the new pricing tier that we are going to represent next week, and then all we talk about their improvement. So if you are permit paying customers or a customer that actually plan to go to the more premium tiers of permit, you probably know the pro tier. The pro tier until today was affordable. It wasn't that expensive, but it was affordable. It wasn't affordable for many startups and applications that had a lot of users. If you probably know, Permit is based on monthly active user. Permit price is based on monthly active user. Every unique user that you check permission for is a part of the quota. One of the things with Permit pricing plan is that we never had blackout features. Every Permit feature is open also in the free for the
Free
open
tier.
source community. sorry, in the free tier, you don't need to do anything to
No credit
access
card or nothing. You
features.
have all the features right off the bat.
Yeah, but now the real thing, the real announcement is that we are launching a new pricing tier. This pricing is called Startup, and that aim for these businesses who want to externalize authorization, but they also do not have the enterprise need in the quota. They don't need a lot of tenants, they don't need a lot of resources, but they have a lot of users, and that really connect you when you grow with your business. When you grow with the user, the pricing is grow with you, and it's significantly cheaper from what you can achieve with the old Pro. So, for example, 10,000 monthly active users, which is a significant large volume, is only $150 per month, which is, I think, lower than even any kind of authentication provider. Maybe a mistake, but I think that it's really similar to authentication, while authorization is something that is significantly involved with the application lifecycle, and really hope it will enable more and more startups to
Yeah.
get to externalize authorization, get fine-grained permissions.
Our
Or do you want to tell
yeah,
us
yeah,
more
our
about the
premise
startup
was
here?
always never build permissions again, and we want this to be true for everyone. Building access control is not unique to any company. It's not unique to any application that you're building. So if you're constantly rebuilding this from scratch, you're probably wasting your time on things that are not in your core business. So we want everyone to have the option to take this uh, friction point off their back, off their table, so they can focus on the things that they actually care about that are at the core of their business. And I had a lot of conversations with people on Reddit and in our Slack community and everyone everywhere else. And we realized that while we are working with a lot of enterprise customers, there are other smaller people. There are indie developers. There are small startups. There are a lot of B2C oriented companies that are starting with a lighter scale initially, and we want them to be able to take this and forget about their troubles with access control. So this is what we're aiming to do with the startup tier. Make this as approachable, as accessible for everyone without exception. And we're really excited to launch this. I hope that maybe early next week already we'll be opening it up for everyone. But already now, if you're interested, if you have questions about it, if you want to see how this would work and scale for you, reach out. We'll give this information to you, and we'll also save the price points for you. So it's while not officially out, it's already available for everyone who's interested. And yeah, and I think this is a really important step to make access control available for every developer.
I want to open up a point that I think is very important, and is also can give a glimpse on the way. I think one of the most interesting part is when you do a pricing model for a startup. That's a really interesting kind of work, and I think one of the unique point with Permit, which is not unique, actually not unique for Permit, but is that the way that Permit work and some other players work in a different way. So for some other player, you are actually paying for the authorization check that you do. Every authorization check is count on the quota. It is actually very easy for, as a startup, it was very easier for us to charge per authorization cost, because then we can very easily evaluate our operational cost for authorization. But it's really hard for the users to predict that. If you are a developer who want to implement authorization, you maybe can predict how many users you have, and probably users will grow your application. But it's really hard to predict how many authorization decision you will do, because, for example, tomorrow you'll need to develop another API endpoint. This API endpoint is complete complex authorization, and this is why we are sticking to the MAU model, to the monthly active users, which is less predictable for us, but is more predictable
For
for
you,
the users and for the developers who is using Permit. I think
in general, our philosophy, I hope it stands out when you interact with us. Our philosophy is always to put you up front, always have empathy to what you're building as developers, and to focus on what would be the best for you to solve your problems and to scale with them. And we try to implement that with our pricing model and with our metrics for pricing from day one, and we're committed to continue doing so.
yeah. So and I think when thinking about, when we are thinking about this new startup tier, it's actually also take effect that, because we say we can let startup do something we can predict, right? Because when you do startups, and when you like sell software as a service for business that are in growth, you need to predict what they will do, because if like there is like B2C customer that's starting to use Permit, and at tomorrow they have like 20,000 users, we need to predict that. So this is why we also added an element of limiting the resources that you can put in the system. It's actually a limit that I don't think any kind of users, but that's the way we guard ourselves from having like out of bound quotas in the
it,
system.
it's
I
it's our responsibility to make sure that the model works for you and works for us going forward into the future. So we put a lot of thought into this to strike the right balance. So at each scale point that you have, it will work for you, and you won't have to grind your teeth or trying to get workarounds. It should just work for you, and we're constantly optimizing this and we'll continue to. But it's important for me that you'll know that we've got your best interest at heart here. We're trying to build this the right way that will ensure that we can continue to support you as a company, but that you'll also have as the least amount of friction as you're adopting this and as you're building your access control.
Yeah, and another thing with the new pricing model that we release is that some of the features that have been open for enterprise is now also open for pro. So we again, as Or said, we are always trying to listen and see how we can enable users to external authorization and do fine-grained permissions better. And one of the things, if you look at the old pricing model, you'll see that, for example, we added the SSO support also in the pro tier because that's something that maybe belongs only to enterprise, but we don't
Yeah.
want to limit business who need SSO from having externalizing authorization, having better
That actually
fine-grained
touches on a
authorization.
very important and sensitive point
Mhm.
that I'm really aware of and sensitive to with single sign-on and other security-oriented features. There's what's called the SSO tax.
Mhm.
I think, and a lot of engineers also think that security should be baked in and shouldn't come with a cost. And this is something that we're aiming to. We're trying to bring the cost for us to provide this to you, and we're trying to bring this the cost to you for this to be as low as possible. The challenge that we're seeing now, by the way, is that it costs us like to add another SSO connection. It costs us money, like the SSO vendors, and we try not to build on our own where we can. We practice what we preach, and we don't build things that we don't think are critical to our core. So we consume authentication and single sign-on from those vendors, and so far all of them charge per customer. So we don't really have a good way of giving this for free. But we're aiming for that, and we're trying to make it more accessible and make it accessible for more tiers. So while this is still an ongoing process, I think we're headed in the right direction, and we're really aware that this is what we want to achieve. One security available for everyone from the start and as approachable as possible.
Yeah, I think that the new pricing tier is really exciting me as the guy who do the developer relation, who lead the team of the developer relation people in Permit, and we see that a lot. We see that sentiment that say, "Hey, we want to externalize authorization, but I'm an indie developer and my app is doing like a couple of thousand a month, and I can't like afford the pro, but I don't want also to go with the free because I need a production support, etc., etc." So I really eager to see how the indie developer in the startup community will start also to externalize authorization. So, and with what changed with Permit for the last years, let's move to the forecast. So I think the first thing that I want to talk about in the forecast perspective is something that make me actually really interest, and that's the support of OpenFGA. So if you are familiar with OPAL, with the open source engine that actually enable the permit synchronization engine and policy engine in permit, you probably saw that there is an ongoing PR of adding OpenFGA support in OPAL. I'll be happy to hear from you. What is your forecast about supporting OpenFGA in permit? What do you think about OpenFGA and OPAL? And in general, how do you forecast this relationship-based access control or Zanzibar implementation in permit for the near future?
Yeah, I think that with Opal from the start, we wanted it to be a bridging layer between all of the different engines. We wanted it to be a bridging layer between the application and the data and the authorization layer itself, and we achieved a lot of that at day one. But also, this, as we kind of mentioned in the beginning, the space has evolved since our day one. And while when we started, Opal was the primary thing, Cedar came along, and OpenFGA came along, And now we want to be able to enjoy the benefits and pros and cons of all of these engines. And but you want this abstracted. You don't want to have to completely change your authorization layer or the way you work just because you want to add one of the advantages of one of those engines. So if you want to be able to use the same policy, use the same data once in OPA, once in OpenFGA, now you'll be able to do so because OPAL will take care of that for you. It will make sure through its abstraction layers to load the right configurations into each. So you have a single source of truth, ideally it's source code in Git. You'll have your distributed data plane that you can access in a unified way with a single source of truth configuration that is ideally also in Git, and have that propagate and replicate it into those engines at the same time. So you can go to each of them and query them for the different benefits. So if you want very low latency deployed at the edge, you use OPA. If you want reverse indices and complex data, you use OpenFGA. And of course, if you want all of that just packed in into a easily used API, you can just use Permit. And by adding this into OPAL, we're enabling Permit itself automatically to enjoy those benefits as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great example of like people who want combined policies. We know that OpenFGA exposed conditions capability lately, but still you probably need to have more complex condition. You need to have condition that can get more types of data from multiple sources. And I think first thing that OPAL will let you run OpenFGA together with policy-based engines like OPA. That's a great announcement. But not only that, if you ever like deployed OpenFGA, you probably know that is lack with integrating into software development lifecycle. And that's also something that the integration with Opal can help with. Do you want to expand on that too?
Yeah, yeah. In general, what Opal does, it makes your authorization layer event driven, which works really well with CI/CD. So you can be event driven, for example, with how you author policies. You push a new policy into Git, you should be able to take it from Git to the actual enforcement as quickly as you need. It might go through staging, might go through tests, might go through benchmarks, might go through a code review before. But once you're ready, you should be able to take it as is and apply it into the live environment. So policy changes, the conversation around policy should be very, very quick. And we've already done this with OPA, and it should be the same with OpenFGA. Why do you need to have a complex deployment cycle for the OpenFGA schema? Why can't it just be something that you set up and Git and have it roll immediately? Same
Yeah.
goes for the data. There's a lot of data that you need to load into OpenFGA, actually more than into OPA. And the
Oh,
schema there can be challenging. The schema there, you might need it more dynamic than your like baseline case. And so being able to utilize that quickly is really something unique that Opal would bring into the just OpenFGA on its own.
yeah, I think it's very interesting for me because I think OpenFGA, the way that Opal will enable developers to adopt OpenFGA is will lead to the motion that we saw with OPA. And the more developers who are actually externalizing authorization or thinking of the authorization earlier, if we can enable them, that I'm really excited we can allow that. I want to get to a point which is actually something that we just have a discussion with one of Permit customers. HeapHealth. HeapHealth is a young startup in the healthcare field in the US. And the founder, Faiz, he told me that he found multiple startups, like he's a serial entrepreneur. And he told me I know now that authorization is something that should come at day zero, at the first day of your startup. And I wish I knew that in the previous startup that we created. And OpenFGA is a great tool for like having fine-grained permissions from the day one. And Opal will soon enable you to do that. Of course, Opal and Permit will enable you to do that very soon. On what other like forecast do you have for Permit in the near future that's relevant for the cloud native community?
Well, I haven't actually thought of like another anecdote there, but I'm really excited into what we mentioned with the policy for policy, and I'm really excited about uh, how this would continue to scale with the scale of the cloud native applications themselves. When as I walk around here, I'm constantly seeing how different companies are always approaching the same baseline problem. How do I meet the complexity and meet the basically dynamic nature of applications as they continue to evolve. And I think it's very clear this is only going to get worse. Our applications are going to continue to get more complex. Our applications are going to continue to be more dynamic. Our requirements from them are going to change more rapidly. It's unavoidable, and I see everyone working on that same underlying problem. And I think it's our responsibility to make them be able to build that in a secure environment, to be able to build that in a way that makes accessing it and controlling who can access it democratized for everyone, and meeting that scale. And it's a kind of a arms race between the how complex the applications can get and how advanced the authorization layer can be to meet those requirements. And I think AI is also really pushing that to the edge, um, as artificial identities are becoming a more prominent aspect of your application. And by the way, we have a lot coming around that, but maybe to just touch one point, I'm being asked a lot: how should I separate my human identities from my artificial identities? And my answer is no. Don't do that. The mere
You
question
want the
itself,
cyborgs.
even the question itself is it will put you in trouble's way. Identities are identities. The complexity that automated interfaces, agents, machine learning components, various types of AIs, APIs, uh, in a year, 2 years from now, they'll be indistinguishable from human identities. Moreover, they'll be the primary actors acting on behalf of human identities. If today most of the identities in your application are human, that's not going to be the case 2 years from now. 2 years from now, it would be automated agents acting on, hopefully, if Skynet doesn't take over, acting on behalf of humans. But it will be more automated agents within your application. So if you start thinking about them differently, you won't be able to make ends meet. It will just break as you try to constantly sync between these two buckets. So the idea is that you should think of all identities equally. Don't discriminate. Uh, we believe in inclusion, so be inclusive to the artificial identities as well. But use entitlements, use the policy itself to distinguish between the identities that are artificial and the ones that are not, and use the entitlements to recognize where the entitlement of the artificial identity is coming from, aka on behalf of which human identity is this artificial identity acting on behalf. And the easiest place to start with that is basic entitlements, basic roles. So a service can have a role that they have to get permissions as acting on behalf of a human identity. And this also works really well with reback. You can have a relationship between the artificial identity and the human identity, and deriving the access in terms there will literally be role derivation from the artificial identity into the access that is granted directly to the human identity. So they're all identities, and you'll be able to mix and match them the same way. You shouldn't separate them, but you can use entitlements and relationships to connect them in a way that will be cohesive.
Yeah, there is. So indeed, you can't do like a forecast without talking about AI. And I want to open also another perspective of AI and permissions. We also just released content, and we are going to launch also a part of a RAG with permit. And this is the permissions of the unstructured data, the permissions of large language models and GPTs. Do you want to also talk
Yeah,
about that?
to clarify, it's very common for large language models on top of the model itself to give them access to a vector database or an additional data source that they can then use as part of their answering to prompts. This is very common when you basically give an agent access to pre-existing data to populate its essentially its memory. Um, and while it sounds like a very basic thing, uh, it's really actually really complicated to control what the agent is allowed to do with the data that you've given it. What is it allowed to access within that database? What is it allowed to act upon with the data that it has in that database? And this is essentially the same access control problem. And our tool, the solutions in this space would work, translate the same way to this. So it's just about uh, importing these technologies of access control into the AI realm as well. And this is what we've done together with data stacks, and but it is also generic to any RAG solution out there. But you can now build policies with permit or with OPA and OPAL, and enforce access by the AI agent to that data to make sure that it's accessing things according to your policies.
Yeah, I think that's really make me interesting. But AI is actually interest everyone there. So if you just look for that, just go to permit.io/blog, and you can read the detailed article on how we are enabling users to create enterprise security LLM applications with the right permissions in the RAG itself. Uh, I think that's a great forecast for us, and I believe that next year we'll be here. We'll be with the continue to be with the community. I just mentioned that if you wanted to have any question, if you want us to bring up thing, I saw that the anonymous just mentioned it was actually in the beginning of the live stream that I got familiar with OpenFGA thanks to Permit live streams. Really like it. I think one of the things that I can say about Permit, we are driving the market education in the fine grained authorization field. We see here a lot of like fine grained authorization booth. There is a booth of the Cerbos engine, of OSO engine. There is, of course, the Project Pavilion. There is the OpenFGA. There is the OPA, of course. There is the Keycloak that has also the static permissions there. And we feel like people are
Don't use
don't use
Keycloak for
Keycloak.
actual access control.
That wasn't a
Do
recommendation.
it, like use it for authentication, identity provisioning. A little bit of RBAC stop there. Bad idea, but there are other solutions. Not necessarily permit, but there are other great solutions out there.
And we really enjoy that when people are actually coming to permit booth and they say, okay, we heard about some more, but our journey with fine grained authorization started with you. It started with your content, it started with your articles, it started with your market education about fine grained authorization. I think it's a really a great opportunity
We're
to
honored.
thanks to Or, to thanks to the team who do like a endless job of market education again about enabling fine grained authorization, externalizing authorization, etc., etc. And with that, we'll finish the permit part of the live stream. If or probably you take a little tour here. There
Yeah,
is any
walk
like
around.
trends and stuff that in general for the cloud native community that you want to bring
So
up?
first of all, it's bigger.
Oh yeah,
Like we've as Gabriel mentioned at the beginning of the permit stream, we've been attending this every year, both in Europe and North America, and we can see the trend. More and more people are interested in cloud native technologies.
hmm
Um, and we're seeing that the conversation, as I mentioned, is revolving around that complexity of application. I see a lot of observability. Observability is still skyrocketing. We see a lot of performance companies coming into the fold, and obviously AI. Every company here has something around AI or is an AI
even
oriented
permit.
company. Well, we didn't put it on,
We
but
didn't put it.
as we mentioned, we
Yeah.
do a little bit of AI as well, and we see identity becoming more part of the space in general, and also platform engineering and developer portals. I think that's becoming also very commonplace. I've seen multiple companies tackling that,
Yeah.
and it's I think it's just amazing to see how much growth this is organization is seeing from year to year,
Yeah.
and I also love how engaged people are. Like I've attended many conferences throughout my career, and this is a unique one. Like it's people coming into our booth, and I also see in other booths are really coming in to talk about the technology, really interested in the solutions, really interested in how this can be applied in production. And I think that's a unique level of technical conversation that you can have here. And I'll say it's been improving year to year. Like the conversations that I've been having just today, I feel were a higher level, or I was able to dig deeper with most of the people coming into the booth than in previous years.
Yeah. You mentioned like the trends. You mentioned like observability and platform, and you actually one of the things to track trends is not only the talk. It's actually going in the solution showcase, see the companies what they are doing. What do you think led to the exponential growth in the number of startups and community that around observability?
Around observability specifically,
Yeah, and
yeah,
telemetry and monitoring. I mean, I think it's like
I think it's
double
it's
three or
it
four
connects to
than
the
it
same
was.
thing. It's the complexity. Like when you're
Hmm.
running a single application on your laptop, it's pretty easy to debug. But once it starts to scale out and it's running on Kubernetes and other dynamic system, or maybe you have Spot instances there, or maybe you have microservices that are dynamic, maybe you have Lambdas, so many moving parts. They're trying to meet the scale and demand of modern applications, and also a
Hmm.
lot more moving parts. Uh, the I think the it's starting to become commonplace that the most common bug that you have is either a race condition or a type of Eisen bug.
Yeah.
So that the deployment layout itself is changing the ability to replicate the bugs that you're seeing and the ability to monitor them. So unless you're able to understand your production system or the system that you want to observe, you're gonna have a bad time, and this is only gonna get worse because
Hmm.
as we said, that complexity is going to increase. And by the way, this is also very true for the authorization layer itself. This is why we created auditing and decision logs baked into permit at day one. So instead of you having to build and trying to understand how that decision engine behaved and how it's connected to things, we baked it for you out of the box. You get audit logs for permit itself, for our API, and for each of your policy decision points. So you're able to meet those traces. You're able to investigate each scenarios in the live environment where you're encountering your problems. These can be around the performance of the policy. This can be around the logic of the policy itself, and can be just around connecting the right policy to the right components. Right, you have intermixing parts. You have the application, you have the policy decision point, and this nature of multiple parts coming together. That's the baseline of cloud native. That's the baseline ability to scale out to meet demand, and it's only going to get worse. And but on the other hand, we have more tools and more capabilities to meet it from the other side.
Absolutely. I think it's also important to mention the logs forwarder. So first
Mm.
thing, it connected to 2 points in our live stream. First, again, not like many others, the audit logs and decision logs are in permit from the free tier, the most detailed one that you can get. So you can actually monitor and observe everything in your authorization layer. But not only that, we also enable the logs forwarder, the feature that allow you to get the log to any kind of monitoring observability service that you actually using. Make sure that your authorization monitoring is actually part of your production. I think with that we'll end our live stream today. If you have any last questions and comment, just throw them. No matter where you're watching us, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, we see them. We have a platform that allow us to see all the comments. So just leave a comment and we'll mention that. We'll wait another give our another 3 minutes to have like a conclusion and summary thought on the
Yeah.
live
Also,
stream.
you can also like if you want the answers now, we'll give you them to you now. You can ask about the conference. You can ask about permit. You can ask about the open source and the trends in general. But also, you can reach out to us later on the community.
Yeah,
You
there
can
is
reach
the
out to me
QR.
directly. Sorry.
There is the QR code on
Oh,
the.
wonderful. You can reach out to me directly. You can just post in our community Slack. So if you have questions thought of later about anything cloud native, you can also reach us later. But if you'll ask now, we'll also answer now.
Yeah. So at the time we'll let people writing. You want to have like a conclusion or summary thoughts on the event?
Well, I think it's a little early to summarize the entire event.
Oh
It's
yeah,
basically
absolutely. Just
just
started.
the second day and actually the first day where the exhibition hall is open and the keynotes are taking
Absolutely.
place. So it's a little early to sum it up, but I think it's off to a great start. I think it's, as I said, a lot bigger than previous years. I think the engagement is improved, and I think that the um, conversations that are being had here are really terrific. So if you're considering if to attend this type of event in the future, at least at this point, I'm giving it a thumbs up. And I will sum up that the stream itself that I am very excited about the things that we've shared here. Both the not both the OpenFGA integration, the new data sync capability to work with data volume at scale directly with OPA, the new pricing that should make this approachable and accessible and have a down path for growth for everyone. I think these are really touching on critical points that we've sensed that are important to you folks, and I hope that this uh, communicates to everyone that we're really excited about bringing this and making this as accessible and approachable to everyone.
Yeah, great. So thank you very much, Or, for joining me today.
Thank you, Gabriel.
And good luck for us at the conference. And see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.